The invitation to the Apex Dynamics annual holiday gala lay crumpled in Christopher Hale's pocket as the security guard at the glittering ballroom entrance in downtown New York City held up a hand to stop him. "I'm sorry, sir, but we've been instructed that only certain employees are allowed tonight," the guard said with a sympathetic but firm look, his eyes darting to the list in his hand. Christopher felt the color drain from his face as he realized the real reason his name had been crossed out, because he was gay, a fact that had spread like wildfire through the office after a careless comment from a coworker. He stood there in his best suit, the one he had saved for months to buy the cold December wind, whipping around the entrance of the luxury hotel. "This cannot be right," Christopher said, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "I have worked here for 5 years. I am part of the team." The guard shook his head. "Orders from HR. Something about company image and client preferences. I'm just doing my job." Inside, Christopher could see the twinkling lights and laughter. Jackson Reed, the charismatic vice president of marketing, mingling with executives as if nothing was wrong. Jackson, the man who had shared secret dinners and whispered promises of a future together in the shadows of their hidden relationship, now avoided his gaze completely. The humiliation burned deep. Christopher turned away, his mind racing with the weight of years of hiding, who he was to keep his job as the night janitor, cleaning the offices that others took for granted. He had always been the reliable one, arriving after everyone left, polishing floors, emptying trash, and making sure the building sparkled for the next day. No one ever thanked him, but he took pride in it. Now that pride felt like a chain. He pulled out his phone and dialed his parents back in Indiana. His father answered on the second ring. "Son, what is this I hear about some party issue?" the older man said, his tone already edged with disapproval. Christopher explained to Ben the real reason behind it. Silence stretched, then his father sighed. "Christopher, you know how the world works. Maybe it is time you kept that part of yourself quiet. For your career. For the family." His mother chimed in from the background, urging the same. The words cut deeper than the rejection at the door. He had come out to them 2 years ago hoping for acceptance, but instead received conditional love tied to silence and conformity. That night, Christopher sat in his small apartment, replaying every interaction with Jackson. The late-night talks in empty conference rooms, the stolen kisses, the plans they made in whispers. Jackson had said he would stand by him when the time came. Yet tonight he had stood inside laughing with the very people who had shut Christopher out. The betrayal felt like a physical wound. The next morning, Christopher walked into the Apex offices early before his shift ended and marched straight to HR. "I quit," he said, sliding his badge across the desk. The woman behind it looked surprised but not sorry. "We will process that. Best of luck, Christopher." As he packed his few personal items from the janitor closet, Jackson appeared in the doorway. "Chris, wait," he said, his voice low. "This is not how I wanted it to go. My promotion was on the line. The clients, they are old school." Christopher looked at him, the man he had loved in secret. "You chose them over me. Over us." Jackson had no answer. Christopher walked out into the bustling New York streets carrying nothing but a box and the resolve that he would never hide again. The cost was high, but the alternative was living half a life. He did not know then how long the road ahead would be or how much more he would lose before he found his way back stronger. Christopher packed his life into 2 suitcases and left the familiar streets of his old neighborhood for a cheaper apartment in Brooklyn. The move was not just physical, it was a break from everything that had defined him: the job, the secret relationship, the quiet acceptance of second-class status. He took whatever work he could find, cleaning offices during the day, waiting tables at night. The pay was barely enough to cover rent and the community college classes he enrolled in for business management. Every evening after his shifts, he sat in the back of lecture halls, exhausted but determined, scribbling notes on accounting and marketing while his body ached from the physical labor. Nights were the hardest. Alone in his tiny studio, he would stare at the ceiling, remembering Jackson's touch, the way his laugh had filled the empty spaces in his heart. The betrayal replayed like a loop. Jackson had not even called after the quit. No apology, no explanation, just silence that spoke volumes about where his priorities lay. One rainy afternoon, Christopher met Marcus, an older gay man who ran a successful consulting firm and volunteered at the community center where Christopher took evening classes. Marcus noticed the young man's drive and the shadows in his eyes. "You have fire, kid," he said over coffee after class. "But fire without direction burns out." What is your story? Christopher opened up for the first time in months about the party, the family, the years of hiding. Marcus listened without judgment, then offered advice. Build something that cannot be taken from you. Start small. Clean better than anyone else. Add value. And never apologize for who you are. Those words became Christopher's anchor. He began saving every extra dollar, buying basic supplies and advertising his cleaning services on local bulletin boards and early social media sites. His first clients were small businesses in the neighborhood, a bakery, a law firm, a dentist office. He worked 18-hour days scrubbing floors, organizing supplies, and learning to negotiate contracts. The physical toll was real. His back hurt, his hands cracked, but the sense of control was new and addictive. Family calls grew tense. His father would ask about work, then steer the conversation to finding a nice girl or settling down properly. Christopher tried to explain his new path, but the responses were always the same. We love you, son, but you're making it hard on yourself. The world is not ready for that lifestyle. His sister sent occasional texts of support, but even she urged caution. The isolation deepened. Christopher dated casually, but never let anyone close, afraid of another betrayal. One night after a long shift, he sat on his fire escape looking over the city lights and made a promise to himself. He would succeed on his own terms. The pain of the past would fuel him, not break him. Little did he know that small promise would carry him through the toughest years ahead. When clients pulled out, funding dried up, and doubt whispered that maybe his family was right. 3 years after leaving Apex, Christopher launched his own company, Phoenix Facilities Management, from the kitchen table of his Brooklyn apartment. He had graduated community college with honors and used his savings plus a small loan from Marcus to buy professional equipment and a basic website. The name Phoenix symbolized everything he had lost and everything he intended to rebuild from ashes. His services started simple deep cleaning for offices, but he added a twist: organizing systems that saved clients time and money. Word spread slowly, at first through satisfied customers who appreciated his attention to detail and respectful demeanor. Christopher made sure every employee he hired felt valued, creating a small team that mirrored his own values: inclusivity, hard work, and no tolerance for prejudice. Success brought its own conflicts. A potential investor during a pitch meeting asked pointed questions about Christopher's personal life after seeing a photo of him at a Pride event. We love the numbers, but our partners prefer a more traditional image, the man said. Christopher felt the old sting, but this time he stood firm. My personal life has no bearing on the quality of my work. If that is an issue, we are not a fit. The investor walked away, and Christopher lost a chance at fast growth. The setback hurt, but it taught him resilience. He pivoted to bootstrapping, expanding one client at a time. Family tensions peaked when his parents visited New York for a weekend. At dinner, his father brought up the investor story, which Christopher had shared in passing. See, this is what happens when you push it in their faces, his father said. Christopher pushed back for the first time. I'm not pushing anything. I am living honestly. If that makes you uncomfortable, that is on you, not me. The argument ended with his parents leaving early and Christopher sitting alone in the restaurant, feeling the weight of their disapproval like a stone in his chest. Yet small victories kept him going. His biggest contract yet came from a tech startup that valued his inclusive approach. The owner, a young woman, praised his team for making the office feel welcoming. Christopher celebrated quietly with Marcus over pizza, discussing expansion plans. Internally, he wrestled with the moral cost of his drive. Was success worth the loneliness, the strained family ties, the nights he still dreamed of Jackson? He started journaling his thoughts, sorting through the anger and the longing, turning pain into fuel. The business grew to 10 employees and a small warehouse for supplies. Christopher bought his first suit since the gala, a symbol of how far he had come. But deep down, he knew the real test was still ahead, when the past would come knocking in ways he could never have imagined. By year 7, Phoenix Facilities Management had expanded into a mid-sized firm with contracts across New York and New Jersey. Christopher had innovated, adding smart scheduling software and eco-friendly products that set his company apart. He hired more staff, including several from marginalized backgrounds, creating a culture where people could bring their whole selves to work. The success felt validating, but it came with sacrifices. Christopher had entered a relationship with Alex, a graphic designer he met at a networking event. Alex was kind and supportive, pushing Christopher to heal from the past. You do not have to carry that knife forever, Alex would say during quiet evenings in their shared apartment. Yet Christopher struggled to let go. When Apex appeared in business news struggling after a bad merger, Christopher felt a mix of satisfaction and unresolved anger. Jackson was still there, according to the articles, now a senior director, but the company was bleeding talent. A major betrayal tested Christopher's growth. A key investor who had funded expansion discovered Christopher's orientation through an old article and demanded changes to the company image, including removing pride flags from the office. It is bad for optics, the investor said in a tense meeting. Christopher faced a moral crossroads. Giving in meant compromising everything he had built. Standing firm risked losing the funding that kept 50 employees paid. He chose to stand firm, buying out the investor with everything he had saved and taking on debt. The decision cost him sleep and nearly the relationship with Alex, who worried about the financial strain. "I cannot watch you destroy yourself for pride," Alex said one night. They argued but reconciled, with Christopher promising balance. The pivot worked. Phoenix recovered stronger, attracting clients who admired the stance. Family dynamics shifted slightly when his sister got married and invited him home. The visit was tense, but his mother hugged him longer than usual, whispering she was proud. His father remained distant. Christopher returned to New York, carrying both hope and resentment. He threw himself into work, expanding into facilities consulting. Late nights in the office, he would reflect on the price of his choices, the isolation, the health scares from overwork, the moments he wondered if revenge against Apex was worth it. Alex encouraged therapy, and Christopher went learning to name his wounds without letting them define him. The business hit $10 million in revenue, and Christopher bought a small house in Brooklyn. Success tasted sweet, but the emptiness from the past lingered, waiting for the day he would face it head-on. 10 years after the Gala, Phoenix facilities management had grown into a powerhouse with offices in 3 states and a reputation for ethical leadership. Christopher, now 38, sat in his corner office reviewing the latest deal, the acquisition of Apex Dynamics, which had fallen on hard times due to mismanagement and outdated practices. The irony was not lost on him. His team had negotiated the purchase quietly, and now he held the power to reshape the company that had once rejected him. Internally, he wrestled with a decision. Was this justice or vengeance? He spent nights pacing his living room, talking it through with Alex, who urged mercy. "You have already won, Chris. Do not let the past turn you into what they were." Christopher knew the words were true, but the memory of that cold December night still burned. He prepared for the return, meticulously reviewing every file on Apex's leadership, including Jackson, who had climbed to senior vice president but lost ground in the downturn. Christopher rehearsed speeches in a mirror, practicing calm authority over the rage he felt. His family learned of the deal through news and called with mixed reactions. His father actually sounded impressed for once, but added, "Do not rub it in their faces, son." Christopher hung up, feeling the familiar pull between pride and the need for approval. Moral dilemmas plagued him. Should he fire the people who had stood by during his ban, or give him a chance to prove change? Should he reveal his identity publicly, or let the work speak? He chose transparency, deciding the new Apex would reflect the values he had fought for. The day before the announcement, Christopher visited the old Apex building alone, after hours walking the floors he once cleaned. The memories flooded back, the loneliness, the hidden moments with Jackson, the quiet dignity he had maintained. He touched the desk where he had once left notes for the day crew and whispered to himself, "This is not about them anymore. This is about me." Alex waited at home with dinner and a listening ear. Their relationship had strengthened through the years, but Christopher knew the return would test it. He slept little that night, his mind a whirlwind of what-ifs. The cost of his journey had been high: lost time, strained family bonds, moments of doubt that nearly broke him. Yet as dawn broke, he felt ready. The boy who had been turned away at the door was gone. In his place stood a man who had earned every inch of his power, and now he would decide how to wield it. Christopher walked into the Apex headquarters on the morning of the all-hands meeting, wearing a tailored suit that spoke of quiet authority. The lobby looked the same, yet everything felt different. Whispers followed him as employees recognized the new owner from press releases. In the main conference room, the entire staff gathered, faces shifting from curiosity to shock as he stepped to the podium. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice steady. "Many of you do not remember me, but 10 years ago I cleaned these very floors as your night janitor." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Old colleagues pointed and murmured. In the front row, Jackson sat frozen, his face pale. Christopher continued outlining his vision for the company: inclusion, innovation, and accountability. He shared his story without bitterness, focusing on the lessons learned. "I was denied a seat at the table because of who I am," he said. "Today I own the table, and I choose to make room for everyone who earns it." The reactions were mixed. Some applauded, genuinely moved. Others shifted uncomfortably, including the former HR director, who had signed off on the ban. Christopher met privately with key leaders, listening to their defenses and excuses. When Jackson requested a meeting, Christopher agreed. In the same conference room where they had once shared secrets, Jackson sat across from him. "Chris, I was wrong," Jackson said, his voice cracking. "I was scared. My career, my family expectations. I thought if I stayed silent, it would protect us both." Christopher listened, feeling the old pain rise, but also a strange calm. "You chose self-preservation over me. I had to choose myself, too." They talked for hours, Jackson revealing his own struggles, a failed marriage, career, regrets. Christopher felt no triumph, only the weight of shared history. He offered Jackson a chance to stay under new performance standards, no special treatment. Back home, Alex listened as Christopher recounted the day. "I did not fire anyone today," Christopher said, "but I set boundaries." "Is that strength or weakness?" Alex pulled him close. "It is growth." The weeks that followed brought more confrontations. Board members resisted changes, some resigning in protest. Christopher faced subtle sabotage attempts from holdouts. Through it all, he stayed true to his principles, promoting based on merit and implementing diversity training that made some roll their eyes but others thrive. His family watched from afar, his sister sending proud messages, his parents cautiously supportive. The return had reopened wounds, but also allowed healing. Christopher realized the real shock was not his position, but the man he had become, someone who could face the past without being consumed by it. As the restructuring took hold, Christopher navigated daily decisions that tested his character. He promoted a young woman from accounting who had spoken up for him years ago, quietly. He demoted a manager whose prejudice had been documented in complaints. Each choice carried consequences. Some employees left, others stayed and grew. Jackson worked hard, proving his value in new campaigns, but the tension between them lingered. One evening after a late strategy session, Jackson stayed behind. "I never stopped caring, Chris," he said. "Even when I failed you. Seeing you now, it reminds me of what I lost by being a coward." Christopher felt the pull of old emotions, but Alex's face flashed in his mind. "We cannot go back, Jackson. But we can move forward with honesty." They agreed to a professional friendship, nothing more. The conversation brought closure, but also stirred doubt. Had Christopher's rise come at the expense of forgiveness? Family dynamics reached a turning point when his parents visited New York for the first time in years. They toured the new Apex offices, his father silent but clearly impressed. Over dinner, his mother admitted, "We were wrong to push you to hide. Seeing what you built, it makes me proud even if I do not understand everything." His father nodded stiffly, adding, "You did it your way, son. That takes guts." The words healed old fractures, but Christopher knew full reconciliation would take time. Meanwhile, Alex proposed they take a trip to reset. During the vacation, Christopher reflected on the moral gray areas of his journey. He had used his power to right wrongs, but had he crossed into revenge? A minor betrayal attempt by an old Apex executive trying to leak negative stories forced another choice. Christopher chose transparency, issuing a statement about his story and the company's new direction. The move strengthened his reputation but cost short-term contracts. Through therapy sessions he had started years earlier, Christopher unpacked the cost paid in health scares from overwork, lost friendships, and the constant vigilance against prejudice. He emerged with clarity. Power was not about domination, but about creating space where others would not suffer as he had. Jackson thrived in his role, earning a promotion based on merit. The company culture shifted slowly but noticeably, with more open conversations and better retention. Christopher's internal awakening was complete. He no longer defined himself by the night he was banned, but by the man who chose to build rather than break. In the end, Christopher stood on the balcony of his Brooklyn home, overlooking the city that had tested him and shaped him. The company thrived under his leadership, with record profits and a reputation for fairness that attracted top talent. Alex stood beside him, their hands intertwined, a quiet symbol of the love that had grounded him through the storms. Jackson had become a reliable colleague and distant friend, proof that redemption was possible when earned. Family visits were warmer, his parents slowly embracing the life he had chosen. Yet Christopher knew the journey's true price had been the years of doubt, the nights alone, the moments he questioned if success justified the pain. He had confronted betrayal, faced societal walls, and made choices that would be debated forever. He thought of the young janitor turned away at the door and the man who now held the keys to that same building. The path had been filled with sacrifice, but also profound growth. As the sun set over New York, he felt at peace with the decisions that had brought him here. True strength, he realized, was not in revenge, but in rising above it while refusing to be diminished by it. The story of his return would inspire some and anger others, but for Christopher, it was simply the next chapter in a life lived authentically. True or false, Christopher's powerful return was an act of justified empowerment rather than destructive revenge.